think they have to be interchangeable. Like what we try to do in an ideal situation is have it be uniform. So no matter where you're consuming our content, we don't really care. So from a high point like watching television, like watching the Super Bowl, to going all the way down to watching NFL highlights, where you do that doesn't really matter to us, whether it's on CBSSports.com, whether it's on CBS Sports Mobile, whether it's on television, it's on CBS College Sports on cable. We're fairly indifferent. The critical choice we need to make is getting the user to use us with greater frequency than going to somebody like ESPN. Because ESPN is really our only pure competition in the sense that they compete with us on a variety of platforms, where somebody like Yahoo, yes, they absolutely compete with us in the .com world, but to a lesser extent they compete with us in mobile, and they don't compete at all in television or radio. It's pretty easy for us because we say sports very broadly, but reality is sports doesn't exist as a sole entity. I mean, sports is the Chicago Cubs, sports is the UCSB Gauchos, sports is the Olympics, and all those kind of things. So it subdivides itself really, really quickly. So we do this effectively. We do layered targeting on top of our content without even trying to do it, just because we're covering a range of sports and interests. People who have a propensity to follow the Boston Red Sox obviously are also going to follow the Boston Celtics or the Boston Bruins, which is fine, and we can tailor make our content to that. The one thing I don't think we want to do is follow the path of ESPN, who's now created specific regional websites like ESPN.Chicago. So they're trying to target the Chicago sports fan and say, hey, stop reading the Chicago Tribune for your sports every morning. Come follow all the action regarding Chicago sports on ESPN.com or ESPN.Chicago.com. That level of targeting I don't think is useful to us, because it's not really what we want to try to do. We want to provide all the tools inside of our site to help you answer whatever sports question or need that you have. That being said, we're also smart enough and I think open enough, because we believe in the open web, to say if we can't provide it to you, we'll provide a link that'll help you get to the content that you want. And if you look at how we integrate something like a Bleacher Report, which is an amalgamation of blog sites, that's not really in our best interest to do. I mean, we don't own Bleacher Report. We have an affinity agreement with them, but we don't have any equity. And so if our users started to slowly migrate to Bleacher Report instead of using CBSSports.com, we theoretically would lose. We don't find that happening. What we find is we continue to service their need. They come back to you and say, hey, this was great, and we got my information from Bleacher Report on this, third round pick in the baseball draft of 2007, and I'll come back to you to follow the lead sports stories of the day. I think in 1995 it was basically a fax machine that was on a screen. So people were trying to trade pieces of information that were very static in nature, limited interaction. You and I were in a baseball rotisserie league together. Instead of me going to the fax machine, taking out the weekly stats, putting them in my notebook, calling you up on the phone saying, hey, I won, we're able to see it at basically at the same time, the same type of information. Over the course of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, all those tools that supported our fascination or our love for playing fantasy baseball got improved and enhanced, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden we got to the mid-2000s, and everything that was a written word or statistic or a number was readily available, which is a good thing. The problem is there was limited editorial of a meaningful variety. In other words, a guy like Rick Riley wasn't writing for ESPN.com in 1995, in 2005, and now he is. So ESPN is basically saying one of the best and brightest voices in all of sports editorial. It's really commentary and editorial, but you know what I mean. Is now going to be available for us every day, and on top of that, they're actually layering video. So, you went from being things that were very static in terms of the type of inputs to being, statistically relevant, accurate, editorial, but mostly the written word, some selection of photographs. And I think where it's all headed is much more motion and emotion. It'll be a lot more sight and sound, because as much as I'd love to say people are going to sit there and read page after page after page, it's not a realistic expectation. I mean, there's 155,000 volumes of books in most libraries, and very few of them are ever read. It's not because people don't want to, it's they have other choices, like watching Emmy Award-winning movies or Oscar-nominated movies. So for us, I think it's now making the migration between having things that are meaningful, like statistics, having things that are important to us, which is like the dialogue you and I would have about any sports team, which is the editorial. But injected into the equation has to be that motion and and the emotion of being able to say, hey, I want to see certain things at a certain point in time, because the play that wins the game ultimately is the story of sports. That's what people care about. It's the winner or the loser, and how you capture that is really, really important. I think as we look out, 15 years, 20 years from now, it'll even be more futuristic. Like, people are going to be saying, well, how do you think the game's going to end? It's not even what happened to the game. It's going to be, hey, based on these, these 15 different inputs, this is the likely outcome.